I want you to imagine with me for a moment. Imagine that you have decided to move from wherever you live now to a brand new house. Excited? Yeah? Except that you have to pack all that stuff you've accumulated for years and years, right? Yeah. But let's imagine for just a moment that you've decided to move to a brand new house. So you've gotten rid of the stuff you don't really want or need anymore, and you've packed up the things that you are going to take with you, and you get to your new place where you're going to live, and you start to unpack. Now, how do you decide what's going to go where? What are you going to think about when you're unpacking and setting up your new house? What do you think? Where do you need it? Okay, good, good. Any other ideas? What else? Think about your kitchen. The kitchen is the heart of the home. And kitchens have tons of things in them, don't they? Little things and big things. So if you're setting up your new kitchen, what might you think about if you have all these boxes of things to be put away, other than what do I need or where do I need it? What else might you think about? Anything else? How often am I going to use it? Because the things you don't use often, you put way up in a high cupboard, right? Right. Joanne. How is my husband going to find it? I love it. That's great. That is great. Okay. Any other ideas? Lee. Who's going to get rid of it when I get old and can't live in this house anymore? Okay, wonderful. So there is lots to consider when we are setting up our house, whether it's a new house or an old house. But whenever we are confronting a change in our lives, we have many, many decisions to be made. This reading that we heard today, 10 little verses from Paul's letter to the Ephesians, has been described as the entirety of the gospel in 10 verses. And it's really true. It's brilliant. Because in this 10 little verse section of the Bible, Paul is talking about the human condition as it is, the bad news, what Christ has done for us, the good news, and what difference it makes. But it's lots and lots of lofty language. And I think that if we can use a house as a metaphor, we might be able to understand a little bit more deeply what Paul is trying to say to us and why it matters, because it does. It truly matters. So, the bad news. The bad news that Paul is talking about is our human condition that we might describe as the house that we had designed by an architect and built by a builder, and that once that architect and builder build our house for us and we move into it, that we have to live in that house exactly the way they tell us to. We have to use the furniture that they choose for us. We have to put everything on the walls and decorations on the tables exactly where they tell us they have to be. And everything we do in our house, the ways we live in our new house, are a reflection of who that builder or that architect says that house is and who we are living in that house. Now, that's a problem, isn't it? That's a problem. Because if our architect who designs and builds our house, us, our lives for us, is not God, then it is someone else. Now, we all know, because we're all grown-ups, we all know that there are so many other voices and influences in our world, in our country, in our culture, in our families, in our communities, that are telling us what should be most important to us and how we should live because of that. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at the messages that our culture, our media, our entertainment sends us, I see one theme above all others. And that theme is that we, as individuals, are by far the most important people who ever walked this earth. And that everyone else and everything else that we encounter in our lives is of less value and less importance than we are. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you hear this? Do you see this? Yes, it's everywhere. And so if it's those messages and that way of living in the world that the builder of our house is telling us is who we really are, we're going to be in exactly the condition that Paul describes in this letter when he says, you're dead. You are dead. You're not alive. If all you can be concerned about and consumed with is getting your needs met and making sure that you have all the privilege and power and accolades that you think you deserve, you're dead. You are spiritually dead. And I'd be willing to say that for almost everyone sitting here today, we know a little bit about what that feels like. We know those times in our lives when we have bought into those lies. We know those moments when we've had a choice between two important things to make. And we choose one path, and it takes us to a place of darkness and dead ends and broken promises and people or things who have lied to us. And we find ourselves empty and disappointed and wondering, what the heck happened? And my friends, that is exactly what Paul is talking about. When we allow the house that is our lives to be run by or supervised by anyone other than God, we are dead inside. That's the bad news. But I love how when Paul gets finished describing the bad news of our deadness, our spiritual deadness, he uses that fabulous word, but. But, he says, through what God did for you in Jesus Christ, you get to move out of that house. When God claimed you as God's own child before you were born, and when that was named publicly in the rite of baptism, God created someone new. God tore that old house down that you've been living in. And it doesn't matter how young or how old you are when you discover this good news. It is the best news you will ever hear. Because when we say yes, when we embrace this relationship with God that Jesus invites us into, that he died for us to have, that God raised him from death to life in order for us to have eternal life, when we say yes to that, we better start packing. Because God is not only making a new creation out of each of us, but he's saying, you don't want that old house anymore, that house that's full of lies and disappointment and broken promises. I'm moving you into a brand new house, a house that God built. But here's the thing. This is so much more than just changing your address and telling the post office to send your mail to a new place. When God embraces us and invites us into a new relationship, and when we say yes, because it's a relationship, my friends, it is not a one-way street. God is not a dictator. God is an inviter and says, Come and let me love you. Come and let me show you what life is really like. And we have a choice. And when we say yes to that profound and life-changing invitation, God gives us a new address, a new house, a new city, a new state, a new country, a new kingdom. Because this is a radical change that happens in the gift of baptism. It's a radical change where Jesus takes hold of us, as he will with Gary in just a few minutes. He takes hold of us in a new way. And he makes promises to us that there is nothing that can ever separate us from his love. And he says, you know what? Where I go now, you go. And when Jesus went down to death and was raised to new life, that's where he took each of us, and that's where he will take Gary in just a few minutes. Any power that has been able to influence Gary or will want to take control of him as he grows will be put to death by the love of God. And instead, God will give Gary his indescribable, eternal, everlasting grace and will say to him, wherever your journey takes you, Gary, I'm there. And all those bad choices you're going to make for yourself or for others, I'll be there to forgive you and invite you to start again. Because today, I am creating something new. So, are we ready to move? Are we ready to let go of all that stuff that's been holding us down and holding us hostage? Are we ready to identify and say no to all those voices that promise us all kinds of things each and every day and turn out to be bold-faced liars? I hope we're ready. I hope we're ready. The very last part of this section of Paul's letter to the Ephesians, after Paul talks about the bad news of our human condition, the good news of what Jesus has done for us is the purpose, the why, the so what. Well, the so what is this: that Jesus knew you before you were born, that when you breathed your first little breath as a crying little baby, God knew why you were put on this earth. That God has a purpose for your life. And that you and I have all kinds of choices every day as to how we live out that purpose. But when we open up our hearts and minds to God and allow God to show us what our God-given purpose is, then we're living in a house that God built like no other. Then we're ready to embark on a journey of living that reflects God's love and God's grace in everything we do. And that tattoo on our foreheads that Lee talked about, it's not just any tattoo. It's the sign of the cross of Jesus Christ, who has claimed us and named us as his own, who promises us abundant eternal life, and who invites us each and every day to move out of that old house, taken over by who knows what, and into the house that he has created and built for us. A house that's full of abundant life and grace and peace and hope. The house that God built. I want to invite us now, music ministry, if you could take your places. I want to invite us now to stand as you are able. We have a favorite song here at Lord of Life, and many of you probably already have heard it at other places. That song is called Sanctuary. And a sanctuary is a place where people can go to be safe from anything that would harm them. We love to sing this song at Lord of Life, and if you are near people who you feel safe holding hands with, we love to hold hands here at Lord of Life. If you don't feel safe doing that, don't do it. But let's together sing Sanctuary and ask God to make us a house that God built, a sanctuary, a place where others can learn from us what abundant life in God looks like.
Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary,